This is a report on my current research papers that I've done with a variety of former students. These include Matt Chang, who is assistant professor of economics at South Dakota State University. We don't have a picture of Matt at the moment. And Jaiwan Kim, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Family and Preventative Medicine at the University of Utah, and Sheng Li, who is also an assistant professor at the Central University of Finance and Economics in Beijing. That's my wonderful visage there. And each of these students is a former student of mine, and they're doing wonderfully out there in the world and are very gracious to spend some of their time still working with an old fart like me. The papers that we wrote in 2010 and just this early part of 2011 include a couple papers in the area of health economics and three papers in the area, well, two other papers in the area of labor economics and one paper in the area of industrial organization. The two health economics papers were done with Jaiwan Kim, and they involve the issue of measuring blood pressure in children and the distribution of healthcare delivery services in Korea. The paper with Sheng Li was on bidding behavior in the construction industry, and another paper with Jaiwan Kim has to do with labor turnover on a large industrial construction site in the south central U.S. And then Matt Chang and Jaiwan and I jointly wrote a paper on prevailing wage regulations in the cities surrounding the city of Palo Alto in the Bay Area of California. Palo Alto does not have a prevailing wage law, and the other four cities that we looked at do. And the question is, did this prevailing wage regulation alter the bidding behavior of contractors in Palo Alto compared to the regimes that had a prevailing wage regulation? So these two papers are on bidding behavior. These two papers, or this paper's on labor turnover and the labor market and construction, and these two papers are on health economics. So these three are in the construction industry, two having to do with bidding, one having to do with labor turnover, and these two have to do with health issues. The first paper I want to talk about is the one that we completed very recently, having to do with the measuring of blood pressure of children. It was a surprise to us, really sort of a shocking surprise, that using a nationally representative survey, we found that 34% of children between the ages of 3 and 17 did not have their blood pressure measured at routine clinical visits. And this is significant because it's estimated that somewhere between 3 and 5% of all children in that age range have hypertension, which is a risk factor for a variety of medical conditions. Maybe it would be okay that 34% of children that went unmeasured were those 34% of all children that showed absolutely no possible signs of possibly having hypertension. But it turned out that 31% of the unmeasured children had family histories of hypertension, 11% had family histories of diabetes, and 5% of that sample had a body mass index greater than 31. So it was a surprise to us that if doctors or other clinicians were not measuring blood pressure, one would think they would at least be measuring the blood pressure of children presenting a body mass index of 31 or having family histories of hypertension. So we used a logistic regression model to examine the decision of these clinicians, and the basic punchline of the paper is that social and economic factors strongly competed with health factors in determining which children were not to be measured for blood pressure. Basically, the story is that examiners put many children in the unmeasured pool who were at less risk for having hypertension, but put plenty of children in that pool who did have substantial risk for hypertension for reasons associated with poverty, lack of insurance, sort of ability to pay reasons, issues of English language handicaps, and issues of race and ethnicity. Well, I just took a little phone call, and so I'm back. And the next paper that Jaiwan and I wrote had to do with the delivery of health services in Korea, and we used what are equivalent of county level data to look at the spatial correlation of whether or not people in some areas compared to other areas use the national health care insurance. And making a long story short, what we found was that in the south of the country, there was a clustering of places where there was an overusage of health insurance services, and then in the northeast of the country around Seoul there was a cluster of areas where there was an underutilization of public health insurance, and there were other smaller patterns that we came across, and we speculate from these results that there are two factors accounting for differential usage of state health insurance. One was income, with higher income people opting to use private health insurance services, and the other was that there are probably areas where the availability of health services is restricted, accounting for the underutilization in those areas. This is sort of a foundational paper for further research on what accounts for these spatial patterns that we found. Another paper that Jaiwan and I wrote, for me it's a very interesting paper based on payroll data for a large, long-lasting industrial construction site in the south central U.S. And what we look at is what were the determinants of labor turnover. The majority of the literature on the determinants of labor turnover in the construction industry is literature that does one of two things. It either looks at multiple work sites across space, and when they do that, they're unable to look at the local labor markets that play an important role in determining labor turnover, and because construction varies substantially across regions, when they look at these multiple sites, they essentially ignore the local labor market and look at other kind of managerial reasons that influence labor turnover. And the second approach that you find out there is very careful case studies of particular work sites that look at managerial decisions that lead to labor turnover, things associated with the morale of the workforce. But nobody out there is looking at the importance of the local labor market. And by combining our payroll data over a long period of time, over 4 years, it was an unusually long construction project, with local labor market information, we were able to identify and quantify the effect of changing local labor market conditions on labor turnover. The results were not surprising, that labor market conditions that are adverse have an effect on labor turnover, primarily dampening labor turnover. Sort of any port in a storm, when other jobs aren't out there, you hang on to the one that you've got, while when local labor market conditions are favorable to obtaining an alternative spot on another project, labor turnover rises. Workers who were coming from a farther distance tended to leave the job more quickly than workers who came from closer home to the job site. Up until a point after that, it turns out that workers who came from really, really far away, over 900 miles, and there were some who came to this project, essentially that investment in travel was such to keep them on that job longer. There are a variety of other conclusions associated with changes in wages and changes in travel incentives. The upshot of which is, one of the things that you surprisingly don't see in the literature is that one way to dampen labor turnover is to raise wages. It seems like a no-brainer, but it's something that wasn't showing up in other researchers' work. A paper that we are revising, that we got some very favorable referee comments on, and we think will be published, and working on the revisions right now, is something that Jaiwan Kim and I did with Matt Chang, and this is an analysis of the bidding behavior of contractors in Palo Alto, where there is no prevailing wage law on public works, and off of Palo Alto and the surrounding communities where there are prevailing wage laws. And the upshot of this is to contradict some of the critics of prevailing wage laws who argue that prevailing wage laws discourage bidders and prevent non-union bidders from winning projects. We found that non-union bidders won as many projects on Palo Alto's jobs as compared to non-union contractors winning work in surrounding communities that had prevailing wage laws. We also found that the bidding behavior of contractors bidding on prevailing wage jobs and on the jobs that weren't covered by prevailing wages did not differ. And they were, we were able to chop up the contractors into 4 groups: those that only bid on Palo Alto jobs, those that only bid off of Palo Alto jobs, and those that bid on and off of Palo Alto jobs. And particularly, we examined the behavior of those who bid on Palo Alto jobs compared to how they bid jobs off of Palo Alto, and the upshot is that there isn't a lot of difference there. So that's most of the research, except for this one paper, which is a lovely paper that Sheng Li and I did, based on some tremendous work that Sheng did, gathering almost 40 years of data on the bidding behavior of contractors in construction. And the issue this paper addresses is, how do rookie contractors that are just coming into the industry, how do they bid on jobs, and how is that different than experienced contractors and how they bid on jobs? And the conclusion here is that rookie contractors seeking to get a foothold in the industry bid more aggressively in order to try to win work. When experienced contractors see rookie contractors coming, they become more conservative in the way that they bid, fearful that they might get caught up in the competition and bid too low for a job. The problem with a contractor bidding too low on a job is that they may not be able to complete the job at the prices that they set. And while we are unable to determine in the data that we have gathered whether the rookie contractors are able to pull it off or not, we do clearly show that the rookie contractors take more chances with their bids. So that's the work that my colleagues and I have been doing in 2010 and early 2011, and I hope you find that of interest.